Good morning, everyone. It's the U Talk show once again, and we've both rolled out of bed like this. We'd like to welcome you to learn about science, art, life, politics, and how the big guy's dicking everyone over, and the things we can do to course correct as a society and as individuals. I'm Host. This is Kyle, and today we're going to talk about why capitalism ruins everything. Why commercialism has undue influence on the nature of our society, and what other factors might be able to counterbalance it. I'd like to just point out at the start that Kyle and I have some very different viewpoints on this, and as far as I'm concerned, part of this goes back to the schism within the Christian church. You might have heard about Martin Luther nailing the theses to the door of the church, and the Lutheran church, now the Protestant church, becoming a thing as a result of that. At the core of this was the idea of indulgence, that as a Catholic, you could go out and sin and, give some money to the church, all is forgiven, all is forgotten, you're fine. The Lutherans, the Protestants, took the view that man's relationship with God was personal, that you cannot pay an intercessor to absolve you of your sins. Ironically, in this respect, Lutherans are very highly anti-corruption. But a side effect of this was the idea of the necessity of leading a virtuous life, avoiding sin, and in many cases, because of the period in time, the best way to avoid falling into sin, falling into temptation, was to keep busy, to be doing productive things. And this idea, which you'll now heard referred to as the Protestant work ethic, deeply underpins some of the neuroses that we have as a culture about what it is that we should be doing with our time. That listening to the birds sing, enjoying art in galleries, going out to dinner, that these things are luxuries that people don't deserve until they work themselves to breaking point. And that is an ideal position psychologically for someone to drive a wedge into our society, to remove us from each other, and to make us, ironically, worship an entirely new god, one made of money. Kyle?
Two things. One, that wasn't where I thought you'd go with that. But that's very interesting. I actually do know about Martin Luther. Not to be confused with Martin Luther King. Very different struggle, but also very much the same struggle in a way. He's kind of been whitewashed throughout history, or all the history of Martin Luther King was whitewashed, but very much in both situations, it was situations isn't fair, and most of society's getting screwed, and we want a better time of it for everyone.
Yes.
Um, very very different, but also at its core very similar. Um,
Imagine
and I
though, just in the case of Dr. King, right? Imagine
hmm,
naming your kid after someone
was a huge
who
reformer.
overturned a large part of the world.
Hmm.
Like, imagine the pressure on Dr. King. Anything less than what he did for society would have been a disappointment, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, and there was one more. Okay, so I have a headache right now and it's splitting, and there was a second thing I was gonna say, but I forgot what it was. What was the end of what you were saying?
Oh, right, driving the wedge into society and making us worship a new god made of money. Yeah.
Right, yeah. Okay, I really don't remember what the second thing that I was gonna say about that. But yeah, not wasn't expecting that would be where you go with that. My whole view on it is that essentially society being so commercialized um, tends to it tends to Sorry, headache getting in the way. I'm a little less well put together today. Society being so commercialized is interesting and also quite strange. And the biggest thing that I've noticed is that it absolutely strangles culture, and that it means the monetization of everything. So
Yeah.
we've seen even social interactions being monetized. Today, I have no doubt that I could start a business, which is quite simply renting out my time as a friend for hire, and just literally just talking to people. I
That is
could.
usually called therapy.
Well, yes, but therapy costs a lot more. If I rented myself out for 20 bucks an hour, 25 bucks an hour,
No,
I'd be
mate, know
much
your
cheaper than a
worth.
therapist. Hey, no, I know
Know
I'm
your
worth
worth.
more
Go
than
for
that.
$100 an hour at least.
Uh, yeah, see, that's kind of it right there.
Yeah,
Like
we are.
right there. That's
This is in
we're trained to
microcosm.
think about money. Yeah, we're
We're
trained to think
trained
about
to
money.
encourage maximizing value, but the only thing that we can think about when we look at value is dollars.
Yeah, I mean, there's more that represents value than money. And
Mm.
we were talking about this in just before one of the last couple of episodes, when in which Horse decided to be a bit of a cheeky bastard. And basically I was talking about how sort of commercialized just the idea of holding a community public event, just for community, like not as a commercial endeavor, but just as a public event for the local community to have fun. That is it.
Yeah.
And it was the idea of doing this at a public park. One of the things that came up was not even as a, oh, by the way, you have to do this, but just it was included in the details. It wasn't even pointed out. It was so natural, so to speak. So second nature was that I was going to have to rent the public park. It's like it's a public park. I'm holding a public event, and I have to actually pay to rent the public park itself. Like it's public property, and yet it's being like. So it's the idea of doing something just for the sake of local community or as a cultural event has found itself being monetized at every level. And we've even, like, we've seen a lot with parasocial relationships now. Where, I mean, hell, even I'm subscribed to a couple of YouTubers who their only real content is just themselves just reacting to things and talking.
That's
And
okay.
it's
We get it.
because
You
they're
have an
cute to
ego
watch.
addiction. There's nothing to be ashamed of.
It's kind of funny because I'm probably the one person that I know that like absolutely hates like the concept of anything, not ego specifically, but anything like similar to that, you know. But that being, I mean, anyway, that being said, I guess the thing that I'm getting at is that we are seeing commercialism strangle everything else. It's I've talked before about what I see as kind of like the five axes of politics. The one that I hate the most, sort of identitarianism or tribalism.
I thought that was
And then,
corruption.
well, I mean, I would say barring the extraordinary circumstances we find ourselves in, but we're not the only one, and those circumstances aren't exactly extraordinary right now. So, I mean, we'll put that to the side, okay? The headaches, I can't think of two things at once right now. So we'll put that in a box for now, and we'll talk about that later. But traditionally, And I guess more fundamentally in politics, if corruption wasn't really a thing, we see, identitarianism, we see humanism, legalism, culturalism, and commercialism. And commercialism has effectively won the day so much that we have seen cultural development and culture itself strangled or centered around commercialism, centered around money. We have seen that, community itself, at best, it's centered around a hobby which costs money. Which like ultimately a commercial.
Which reminds me, have you gotten around to painting your fucking minis yet?
Some of them.
Those armies are not going to paint themselves.
Hey, I don't actually have armies yet. I just have individual minis. I'm not. Look, fortunately, I can't decide on what army I would like to get if I'm going to get an army, so I'm spared from the torment of everything regarding that.
Spared from the torment.
Look, we have money, we have the control of money. In fact, actually, that's kind of funny because in the the leagues of OTAN, yeah, it almost seems like they're a metaphor for commercialism because they make every decision based on one of two things. It's either based on money and resources and whether or not it's better to go to war or trade to get access to those, or whether or not they're essentially holding a grudge, which is like somebody has insulted us or done something, and so we're going to throw all of our might, no matter what the cost at it.
So identitarianism and commercialism there.
Yes. So
I'm going to just cut in here for a second and point out one other thing, though. What you said about being able to rent yourself out as a friend for hire, a mercenary with benefits. I don't know. I work with clients on the NDIS in my day job, and that's like social skills building, social skills reinforcement. So I wouldn't say that I'm a friend for hire, but sometimes it does feel dangerously close to that. But there is an underpinning problem here, and that is that we all have to do something to make money because wages for normal jobs are not really bearing much resemblance to having an 8-hour workday and then being able to have recreation and still afford rent. Because of the intersection of so many factors, which is the erosion of workers' rights, the erosion of the standing of workers in society,
speaking of that,
could be argued deliberate maintenance of scarcity in housing. I'm just going for a second here. We're also in a position where trying to fight the tide of commercialism feels like a futile endeavor. And if you had a sufficiently pessimistic mind, you could argue that there is some grand conspiracy behind this all. And I don't think that there are lizard folk in suits trying to make me depressed forever. But certainly you have to ask the fundamental question of who does actually benefit from this state of affairs.
Well, I was actually just about to just while you were saying the beginning of that, it kind of made me think about the fact that, like you said, we are seeing an erosion in workers' rights. And you mentioned the 8-hour workday. That isn't the case a lot anymore.
No.
We're seeing, I am seeing people, we're working longer than 8 hours. That I can mention examples. My father, my my partner. They're essentially, we're having hours stolen from us.
I'm sorry. I thought your father was just popping out for a pack of cigs and some milk.
I will not have the good name of my father slandered.
He has a good name. I've heard you bitch about him, mate. At least mine's in the ground.
You sure him? You sure I've been bitching about him?
I don't know. There's so much dysfunction going on there. But in any case, we're having hours stolen from us.
Yeah. So the thing is, what I've really noticed is that like we're seeing our entire lives centered around commercial endeavors. And the culture we have, if you can actually say that we have a functional culture in society today, the culture itself is being like just the idea that you can have a side hustle, and there's even such a thing as a side hustle coach. That's a real job. It's not I have a hobby that I sometimes make a bit of money off of, and I do this thing because I love doing it. um and I kind of just sell the excess, say, like painting
My
miniatures. I
partner,
sometimes
my partner makes soaps, and every time she tells someone about this hobby, the question is the same. Oh, do you sell them? Do you sell them at markets or something? It's
yeah,
like even
that's
even sharing a part of yourself, there is the expectation there's going to be some monetary return, and that is profoundly
yeah,
cooked.
yeah, just the fact that there is that, yeah, just the fact that there is that expectation, the fact that that, like, it's just either assumed, or it's even weird if it's not. Like, it's strange to
Mm.
not have it be a commercial endeavor. We're running out of time, but like I'm again,
I
the
mean,
head
I
is
know
kind
that
of
you're
getting in the
talking
way
about
right
the
now,
show
but
here, right? I know you're talking about the show here, but I feel like that is sort of a metaphor for absolutely everything that's happening in society that we're looking at, right?
well,
We're
yeah,
running out of time.
and we have a headache.
We're running out of time. We have a headache and we're tired and we need to course correct.
Yes, yes, and it's like we've got less than a minute and a half now, just over a minute actually. But I'm trying to get to like the effects of this.
I think we don't need to though. Like we've already talked about some of the effects that we've personally seen, but I think everyone who sees this can think of a way in which this creeping, pervasive monetization of every breath
Hmm.
is just keeping them down.